In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
Grampian Nation, welcome back. Today we've got another Grampian, actually, that is going to join us. And this fella is a military kid, a farm kid, a wrestler, a coal miner, a lineman, a pilot, a telecom entrepreneur, a husband, father, grandpa, and a mountain climber. And so, folks, welcome to our show, Mr. Gary Ervin. Welcome, Gary. How you doing, man?
Good, Jim. Thanks for that introduction. That's a lot of words. But it tell you that I'm very old. I've done a lot of things.
You know, as I read down the list of stuff that you would include in like a bio, I'm like, dude, maybe we were separated at birth a little bit. I mean, other than the mountain climbing, I mean, the farm kid wrestler, working in the mines. I was in a taconite mine and you were in a coal mine, and you were a lineman. I was a groundman. We both were in telecom. We're both pilots, husband, father, grandpa. Dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. We need to hang out.
Well, I'm going to confer on you official Grampian status right out of the gate, because that's a combination of a Gramp and a champion, and a lot of the stories that we get to share are just how we survived.
Hey, do I get a T-shirt or something?
You do get a T-shirt. You give me your size and your address, and you'll get you a pen too.
All righty.
And only people who were on the program actually get those. So
good.
All right. So tell us like the brief story about you growing up, because I see military kid, farm kid, wrestler. What was your childhood like? You weren't even born in the States.
No, I was born in the military base, Bad Kreuznach, Germany. My father was in the Army. My mother promised her mom that she would go to school and be 20 before she got married, and she got married. Flew to Germany, got married when she was a week over 20. So, and then grew up while he finished his enlistment, and moved back to and just traveled. He did an assortment of jobs. He worked in the oil fields in Louisiana. He operated on grocery stores, and we settled back where we're from in Western Kentucky, and had been there since I was in the third grade. That's where most of my family was born. We kind of were dotted along that path, but we call Western Kentucky home.
All right. So your dad was kind of chasing work for a while and dragging the family with him a little bit. That was pretty common back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And, you know, a lot of our success in business and life and raising our own families and the success of our kids were really things that we learned from my parents. And you know, they came from, my dad's father died at an early age, his granddad. So he was the man of the family at 13 years old. And so he placed a tremendous value on family and being a unit and always, no matter good or bad, because you know, we've got those black sheep that roll around from time to time. So
I'm one of them.
Yeah. So accepting the fact that everybody's going to be a little different and do things and still love them and say, you know, they are family. So that was important. And I try to instill that in my kids and my grandkids too. So my job now is my grandkids. My kids are already cooked.
Job number one. There you go. Hey, so I see, I mean, wrestling, I just had a like Division I, number 2 in the country wrestler on, and he's an amazing dude. But I see that it was really important to you as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about wrestling.
It was first thing that, and, you know, FFA speeches. And, you know, I was president of my FFA chapter and a farmer. So I knew only two things, is that and me and my brother fighting together and wrestling. So when it came out as a sport in high school, I signed up, and that's really the first thing I got recognition or success at, and brought me to college. I had a job in the coal mines when I was 17 years old, and I would probably stayed there. I made more money than I thought was ever possible. And I wanted to continue my wrestling career, and went on to college and wrestled in college. I wrestled.
Scholarship wrestler too.
Yeah, started 4 years, and then I spent a year coaching. And I've got two sons that I coached all the way through high school, and I coached the cadet national team that went to Europe and wrestled Bulgaria. Then we traveled through
awesome.
France, and so I did that until my two sons were out. And then it's funny, I say I coached two sons to through high school, and I had two girls, and I was equally as aggressive with the pageant girl. So I had a Miss Kentucky and Miss Union County, and she runner up in Miss America. So
right on.
So that was like teaching a kid a wrestling move, is teaching your daughters that were tomboys how to walk, and I didn't know anything about that either. I had to learn.
Yeah.
So, but that's
pretty strategic.
Yeah.
Well, they say if you've wrestled, everything else after that's easy. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. It's the best 3 minutes or 9 minutes of your life, depending on what level you're at.
And I've learned very important life lessons from that I still do. Preparing for anything, whether it's a mountain or for it's a job, or if it's work, and then finding a way to win. Sometimes you're not the strongest person, and you're not the person that should win on paper, but wrestling was something where somebody a little bit smarter and wanted it a little bit worse would win. So that's an important lesson that I learned in wrestling. I wasn't always the strongest or the best, but it was my job to find a way to win.
Ultimate test of your heart. That's what wrestling is. So then I look down and I see, you get out of college, you did the coal mining thing, you went to college, and then you said, gee, I think I'll go be a lineman. Now, when we graduated, sometimes there wasn't very many jobs available, and people don't understand, like when 8 or 10 or 12% of the population is unemployed, man, you're scrapping for every nickel in every job.
In the oldest of six. I was 18. I was at the time 21. So I didn't have a choice. Plus my coal mine jobs. It was when the metallurgical coal markets crashed and the steel plants crashed, and the union miners from all over paneled the job that I had done for the past 3 summers. So I didn't have my coal mine job. So it was just responding to an ad in the paper got me into this line of work that I'm still in today.
And that was the advent of what we would call cable TV, right?
Yeah, it was early days. We franchised the local hometown that we built, made every mistake in the world, learned a lot from it. In 1980, interest rates shot up to 16%. We almost lost the family farm as a result of it. So, but we were just in a good industry, and everybody says, "Man, what a wonderful decision you made back then." It was nothing. It was outhouse luck. It's what it was. It was being in the right place at the right time was not a good decision. That's
exactly
out of necessity.
Right. So as I look down that history, I see a guy, because people don't understand, when you've climbed a pole, it's different than climbing a tower. It's a lot different than climbing a tower, but when you've climbed a pole, you end up with some slivers, and it doesn't matter whether you got gloves on, because you can get them in the wrist, you can get them in the forearm, you can get them you can get them in the calf, you can get them through your boots. It's a tough way to make a living.
Yeah, and back then there was no bucket trucks. We worked out of a flatbed truck, so we had a hand brace and bit. I've got a picture of me on a pole behind me, and I'm on top of a pole with a hand brace drilling the hole in it to put the hardware in it. And of course, I had no shirt on, so which
so you got tummy slivers too.
And then the slivers, the poles were treated with creosote back then, so they would the stains would stay in your skin forever. You'd have all
Yeah.
these black the splinters that would stay in, and after you splinter would leave, you'd still have the black creosote stains.
Yeah, those little
So
buggers fester pretty slow, don't they?
yeah, but I absolutely loved it. It was something
Yeah.
that, like wrestling, I was really good at. I recruited a bunch of guys, and we still do. I still recruit
Yeah.
kids that I've coached in wrestling, or someone that has wrestling. A friend of mine, we had 2,500 employees, and when he interviews somebody, or one of my managers, he would ask them, most of my family's involved in this business. He asked, which Ervin are you? If you're not an Ervin, which one are you married to? And then if the answer was, I'm not an Ervin, I'm not married to an Ervin, he said, what weight class do you wrestle? So he said he gets one of those three answers about
There you
100%
go.
of the time.
Awesome. Awesome. So then I really think it's really important. People don't understand entrepreneurship anymore. And when you're an entrepreneur, it just means in a bit like wrestling, you're going to do kind of whatever it takes. If you can't out muscle them, you can't out lever them, you got to outsmart them. You can't outsmart them, you got to outwork them. And it usually comes down to that last one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
And
remember my wife and I running to the mailbox looking for an early paycheck because, man, we needed to make payroll on Friday. And I bet you've experienced some of the same things.
yeah, and then begging people to pay me early so I can make the payroll for the next week.
Yeah.
And we were in such a booming business. We grew at 20-30% a year and made 20 or 30% margins. But guess what? After 20 years of that, I still had $0. So
Yeah.
it was, everything was to fund growth. And
Yeah.
I had family members coming out of college and joined the family business. And now I've got my children in it. We're a public company now. We
Yeah.
merged it with a public entity. So it took a lot of the pressure off, but I still treat it like it's my money. It's the
Sure.
shareholders' money,
Yeah.
but it still ran like it's coming out of my pocket. So
Goodness. Yeah. That's why you got to do it.
yeah,
So, you started a business, a family business, and you were like the first employee. Probably your wife was the first employee, but
yeah.
she was helping you keep books and stuff. And how many other people did you have when you started?
Well, actually, me and my brother were the first two. They came
Okay.
before the wives even. So they so we worked out of two trucks.
Yeah.
We had one truck with three guys on it, and then we spent when he got out of school, we had the second truck with three guys on it, and then it grew to we've got 2,500 people doing it now. So
Wow,
we
that's
build
crazy.
we would work all summer building 100 miles of cable TV, and today I will build 100 miles of fiber optic cable somewhere in the United States in one day.
Yeah.
So and that's the scale and the size, and very proud of kind of what it's done. And I
Hmm.
had to evolve from a small business to a big business over the years, so I learned a lot on along the way, and
Sure.
very different from being where you control everything that happens as the lineman in that crew to you're in charge of 2,500 people,
Yeah.
and being able to delegate responsibilities and delegate your leadership. That was a hard thing for me to learn too. So
I think it's hard for all of us to learn, especially you come up with when you started with two, because we started with two as well. So, do you guys do plowing and boring and that kind of stuff now too to deliver fiber? So you're kind of covering every avenue about delivery to the home.
yeah, yeah, we do engineering now. So we still do some tower work because now it's actually good tower hands are hard to find now
Oh
because
yeah,
it's an old art.
yeah,
But now with the cell towers
yeah,
coming and 5G, 6G coming up, it's more towers.
yeah,
And it's more built on high rises, and so it's kind of jack of all trades. It's not like you're going on a 100-foot or 200-foot long
yeah,
tower that you're mounting antennas. These are you got a bank building, a 20-story bank building, and you got to put a set of antennas on it.
yeah.
So it's different.
Those rooftops. There you go.
Yeah.
So, you built your business, and now you're a husband and a father and a grandpa, and you decide, gee, I think maybe I'd like to start mountain climbing. Where'd that come from, bro?
Yeah. It was bizarre. I was always physically fairly fit. I like to climb things. I like to rock climb, and I spent probably 6 months right after we sold the company. My daughter went to school. My oldest child. It was right after my youngest son graduated from high school when I coached
Mm-hmm.
him. My oldest son graduated from college, and I spent 6 months filming a reality TV show, The Amazing Race, with my daughter.
Yeah,
And
Mallory.
yeah, and I felt kind of guilty. And I said, "Hey, me and the boys, we're going to take off this summer. We're going to go to Africa. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go climb Kilimanjaro." And it was the first big mountain I've ever climbed, and I just absolutely loved it.
Uh-huh.
It was something that called to me like nothing else. And the boys went with me. It was kind of a trip that we were going to have fun. We were going to do that, and we were going to go Zanzibar and scuba dive and go on a trail and just watch the animals in the Serengeti and
Sure.
the Ngorongoro crater. And so it was about a month long trip that I took off and did that. And after that, it just bit me. In 3 months after climbing Kilimanjaro, I said, well, what's the next big mountain? And then I started reading about the seven summits. And in that, it says you have to be good at, on ice and cold conditions. And Africa
Yeah.
wasn't real icy or cold. So, and then you had to have experience above 7,000 meters or 23,000 feet.
Yeah.
So immediately I got back and I booked Elbrus in Russia that I went to, and
Wow.
it was a 18,000 foot glacier that was a real icy cold
That's
mountain.
a serious ice climb, isn't it?
Yeah, it took crampon. It's a frozen mountain. It probably did a lot of more ice climbing in Denali, the last one that I did.
Uh-huh.
And I did a lot of vertical ice climbing practicing for it, or the Lhotse face in Everest, climbing that thing. It's a steep blue ice, monster with fixed lines that your toes are just bruised black by the time you get up it 2 times. So it's
Yeah.
uh, but I got 23,000 feet. Failed the first time I tried it. I had to turn around, hurt myself, and then went back the next summer. And then the ice wasn't that bad. It's just a matter of having the right equipment and being able to withstand the cold.
Sure.
And then I started dreaming, maybe if I get Everest, maybe I can do Everest. And then so my first shot at it is it wasn't to go see what Nepal's like and go practice on a smaller mountain. I went in 2016, and I said I'm going to climb. I ended up. It was a very good learning lessons, but I ended up seeing multiple people die on that trip. I was with
Yeah.
them. I had to leave some of them up there. It was
Yeah.
very painful. Took me a while emotionally to get over it. I had some PTSD from being in that experience. And then it made me reevaluate why I want to do this.
Yeah.
Is it that important? I tell everybody after that experience I had, emotional scars from seeing these people pass away, and there's nothing I could do about it. But I had my toes were numb and no feeling in it. My kidneys quit functioning because my body ate up so much protein. I lost 45 pounds,
Wow.
and my face was frostbit. And I said it took a couple of weeks to get my kidneys functioning. Took a few months to get my feeling in my fingers and toes. It took me a year and a half to talk my wife into letting me go back. So 2018, I was able to return, and I went with a group of professionals, venture consultants that is probably the best on the mountain, the Sherpa that I had, and they did it right.
Mhm.
I was when I got to part where I was going to push for the summit. You start at midnight, 11 o'clock at night, and it's pitch black. And when I got up that morning, the feeling that I had 2 years later was a whole lot different. I was better nourished. I was better oxygenated, had better rest. So the summit day was just a beautiful experience that day instead of the horror I went through 2 years earlier.
Yeah.
So it's the good and the bad of the mountaineering that I saw on one mountain, but
Wow.
for everything bad that I've seen or felt, there's been 100 beautiful things that have happened and things that have changed my life as a result of being able to overcome those type of hurdles and obstacles.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about the seven. And so for our folks who don't know anything, I'm a flatlander from South Dakota. So I live in the Rockies now and I love it. But what are you talking about? What seven are you talking about?
So it's the 7 highest points in every continent. And every continent, including Antarctica, has a mountain,
Sure.
has a high peak. And in fact, just a few months ago, my latest challenge. So I completed the 7 highest points in every
So
continent.
let me just walk through to help people. It's Denali, Everest, Aconcagua,
Mhm.
Kilimanjaro, Elbrus in Russia, Vinson Massif,
Mhm.
Cartanens, and Island Peak. Did I pronounce them all right?
Well, Allen Peak is the 8th one, but those 7
Okay.
were the 7. And the
Okay.
8th one, Island Peak, is just a training mountain in Nepal that I used to climb.
Okay.
That I had to be airlifted off of. That was another story. So, but
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, wow. That's what are the odds of somebody now? When did you climb? How old were you when you climbed Everest?
I was it was 6 years ago. I'm 67, so I was 62.
61,
I had to get a
62.
special permission. So to get accepted to some of these climbing teams, especially the good ones, you have to have experience in ice, and you have
Hmm.
to have experience at 7,000 meters.
Yeah.
And since I was 62, I had to be signed off by a certified mountaineer trainer. So I
Hmm.
signed up for this company called Uphill Athlete and got a trainer and went through a 6-month long training program that he certified that I was fit to climb Everest before they would take my money, which
Yeah.
was tens of thousands. It's not a cheap. It's not a young man's sport, then, and it's a very expensive sport to be in. So
Yeah.
either you got to be young and good and get sponsors, or you got to be kind of old and
Yeah.
crazy and have
Yeah.
enough money to afford to be able to take the time off work and pay the good companies to make sure that you're safe while you
Wow.
climb.
Wow. And so, what is the percentage of people at 62 who actually make it, who actually summit any of those?
You know, I'd say that the percentage of people who try it versus make it is pretty high because most times when somebody's older like that, they either have been doing it a while,
Hmm.
unlike me that just started a few years before. Uh, but I'm definitely the oldest on just about every expedition I've ever been on, by almost double. And
Yeah.
there's a reason that there's not very many older people on those expeditions. It's just it's pretty grueling.
Physically brutal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Physically
and a
brutal.
lot of it is just the environment. It's just
Hmm.
sleeping on a block of ice, and I got posturepedic bed now, and sometimes that hurts my back when I wake up in the morning. But it's things that you learn to endure. You learn to after a week of sleeping, on a quarter-inch foam mattress, it's not that you had. It's not
Yeah.
that bad. As long as you're
Yeah.
warm, that's all that matters. And
Right.
you don't
Right.
need, it kind of on the Amazing Race when I ran it with my daughter, we had one backpack and that's all we had, and we lived like months out of it. And that was all the possessions we had. We traveled through
Yeah.
India and China and all over the world, and that was all we needed. When you're on a mountain for 2 months, kind of food and water. Your food's not fancy; it's rice or lentils and water, and that's all you eat. That's all you really want. And what you do, and I tell everybody, I said, when I go to a mountain and I reset, I take off for a month and I come back, or 2 months in Everest is 2 months away from home. I come back and I'm a changed person. I don't come back saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I come back more saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to take people and things out of my life that are a waste of my time and effort. And as we get older, those years are valuable. And we try to look at making the best of these gray-haired years that we can do. So that's been my focus. And now grandkids the last 7 years, and that's been probably my joy. I tell everybody the being a parent, that's hard work. That's a hard job. You gotta do all the bad things. You gotta discipline. You gotta tell them they can't do this, they can't do that. But being a grandparent, all you do is the good stuff. You don't the bad stuff. That's your mom's job. That's your dad's job. That's not.
But it ain't all lollipops. We're coaching. I mean, I just talking to you, I can tell you, you're coaching your grandkids. You're making them. You're teaching them to make great decisions, aren't you?
I'm trying to, and that's the ultimate. It doesn't matter when I die, how much money I've got, how much what I own. It matters is my children and my grandchildren, how they turn out. That's probably the most important thing that I can do right now.
Yeah. And time becomes a whole lot more important than money, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So I want to kind of close off the mountain climbing segment by saying, number one, folks, go visit GaryClimbsMountains.com. If you want to hear some of the stories and read some of the stuff, it's just an amazing site that will walk you through some of what Gary experienced. Grampian Nation, go online and check out our podcast, subscribe, and make sure that you catch all the cool stuff that's coming out on Grampian. This is Jim. Thank you, Gary, and we are out. When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast.